The Blazing Dread is a Tier 7 premium Japanese cruiser obtainable for 15,000 Dread coins, which are the special currency you get as a reward for playing the new Halloween event. 15,000 is the price. I'm not sure whether you can acquire that many for free or whether you would have to purchase crates or something along with that in order to get this ship. But if you can get it for free or you can get it cheaply using all those Dread coins, then it's probably a good pick. I'd say it's pretty strong, and I've got a good game that should demonstrate that. But what is it? Well, it looks an awful lot like the Mogami, and that's because essentially it is. Well, not really. It's more or less a copy paste of the Suzuya, which itself is a copy paste of the Mogami. The big difference between the two being that Mogami is a heavy cruiser with 8-inch guns, and Suzuya is a light cruiser with 6-inch guns. Remember, the heavy versus light distinction applies to the gun size and doesn't really have anything to do with the armor scheme. So this is another light cruiser version, essentially, of the Mogami. And that's a pretty good thing. There's some differences between this thing and the Suzuya in terms of fire chance, and some other minor differences that give it a little extra spice. And then there's the consumable loadout, which I suppose we should start with that first, because we do have something unique here. In the third consumable slot, you can see in the first two, damage con, of course, then sonar. But in the third one, we've got a smoke screen. The smoke screen disperses for 65 seconds, just over a minute, and it reloads in 232 seconds. So you can deploy this smoke screen, which we will. We don't need to do it now because you can see the friendly destroyer has deployed a smoke screen in front of us. But you can deploy this smoke screen while you're kiting away to prevent the enemy team from firing at you and sit in smoke for a little bit over a minute, farming them with your excellent HE power. Keep in mind, the commander build I'm using for this battle is Gunichi Mikawa, the more defensive-minded cruiser commander, and the primary reason I'm using him is because of the ingenious skill in the first slot. You can see it gives us that little indicator of how many enemy ships are aiming at us, which is fine, but the real reason to use Ingenious is that it buffs the turret traverse massively. I was trying to use Azerlane Atago and Haguro, and both of those are good because they massively buff the HE power. However, I found that with using Aiming Systems Mod 1 in the first slot, the turret traverse without Mikawa and his ingenious skill was something like 30 seconds, which is terrible for a cruiser. That's like battleship level turret traverse. And if you've got to spend that much time getting your turrets on target while you're trying to kite away and use the rudder, then you're going to limit your DPM because the turrets simply aren't going to be pointing in the right direction to actually shoot at ships. You could use the Turret Traverse mod in the first slot instead of Aiming Systems Mod 1, but then if you do that, you lose out on the extra 7% dispersion bonus from Aiming Systems Mod 1. That might not sound like a huge loss, but I think having more accurate guns on this cruiser is perhaps a little bit more useful, and Mikawa, in any case, is a free commander. I've also got Mimbeli as inspiration, and Kuznetsov as the other. So what we're looking at is a totally free-to-play build on the Suzuya. I'll put it on the screen later on in the video. There's going to be a perfect time for that, but right now the action is a little bit in the swing of things, so we don't really want to interrupt that. In any case, the stats that I'm about to read you are going to be influenced by my Mikawa Commander build. This should be achievable for pretty much anybody, although my Mikawa is at a very high level, rank 16, Legendary 2, I believe, or Legendary 3. And then both Kuznetsov and Mimbeli are also highly ranked as well, so your mileage may vary if you want to imitate this build. To begin with, though, we've got 34,200 HP. That's not a ton of HP. This is not very tanky for a cruiser. It's basically a Mogami hull, so it's got 25 millimeters everywhere, which is, of course, overmatchable by practically everything. The Citadel is gigantic and accessible, so it is possible to dev strike this ship. I think, ideally, you want to be sailing away more times than not, and then using the rudder to dodge shells. We'll demonstrate that here in this sequence. But speaking of shells, let's talk about the main guns. There are 15 of them, set in 5 triple turrets. There are 155 millimeter guns or 6-inch guns, light cruiser guns. 16.1 kilometers is the range without any range buffs aside from the Kuznetsov inspiration. They reload in 8.5 seconds. Turret traverse with Mikawa is 23.8 seconds, much better than 30. Maximum HE shell damage, 2300 with a 15% fire chance. That's one of the differences between this thing and Suzuya. You start off with a higher fire chance than even Suzuya has, and that thing is known as a bit of a flamethrower. Suzuya's base fire chance, as far as I can tell, is 11%. Here we have 15. You can, of course, buff that with other commanders, but I think as you'll see as this video continues, that's not very necessary. 15% is excellent. We already have 7 fires, and we're about 6 minutes into this battle. The maximum AP shell damage is 3,300. This is not really an AP slinging cruiser, but you can use the AP, and I think we do a little bit later on, or maybe that was in a different game. I could be remembering that incorrectly. In any case, the gunpowder on this thing is fearsome. It's not like this HE has any sort of special pen as far as I can tell, but it does light a lot of fires, and that's where a lot of the damage comes from. As you could see against that Atlantico a few moments earlier, we also have torpedoes. We've got 12 torpedoes actually, 16 set in 4 quadruple launchers, 2 on either side of the ship. The firing angles, like the rest of the IJN, are mostly backwards, so they work best when you're kiting away. If you're going forward and you want to launch the torpedoes, you have to show full broadside and open yourself up to dev strike. So these are not the primary armament on the ship. They're the thing you want to use as you're kiting away. And that's the playstyle of this thing, I think, much like the Mogami and the Suzuya. You push in a little bit, you get to a spot where you can farm the enemy, and you start kiting away when they return fire. The torpedoes have an 11-kilometer range. They're not very fast, at only 56 knots, and they hit for 17,233 damage and reload in 109 seconds. The AA defenses, I'm going to gloss over those as I usually do because who cares, but this thing does have an aggregate AA rating of 44, so I don't think it's super capable of defending itself. The maneuverability, however, is a true highlight. Now keep in mind, Mikawa's skill set does buff the speed and the rudder shift time, so these are not the base numbers. But with Mikawa at the helm, we've got a 38-knot top speed. That is excellent, although that is due in large part to the 10% speed boost that one of Mikawa's skills gives you, or the 10% speed buff, I guess would be the correct term. Oh yes, here's an example of the AP against Azerlane Chapayev, who's pushing in. We've also got the Tier 6 Maya along with him. We are going to shoot AP at these guys off and on. You'll be able to see it's fairly mediocre, but it can get the job done, and it can score citadels on light cruisers at fairly long ranges. That guy was about 11 kilometers away. Anyway, 38 knots speed, 750-meter turning circle, and a 4.8-second rudder shift time, which is good enough to dodge. Then finally, the concealment with Mikawa at the helm. Mikawa, by the way, is a very valuable cruiser commander. He was one of the first commanders in this game that I brought to rank 16, and I recommend anybody else do the same because his base trait buffs cruiser concealment, which is universally useful to you on literally every single cruiser. Mikawa is a good inspiration for any cruiser commander of any nation. Concealment is always helpful for a cruiser. In any case, the playstyle of this ship is a lot like the other IJN cruisers at the tier. You push in, you kite away, and you farm. That's what we've been doing this whole battle, and as you can see, we're up to 133,000 damage, and the enemy team is down to 3 ships. One of which is the Maya, who is giving broadside at us from about 9 km. So there's another citadel from the AP. Certainly don't sleep on it, but the HE here is the bread and butter. Again, we've done nothing to buff the efficacy of this HE in any way. We have 147,000 damage and counting with the fire on the Maya, and so far 12 fires lit. 0 kills. We've certainly farmed a lot of damage. We haven't actually converted anything to kills. We've just got 3 assist medals, and we were going for 5. I discovered yesterday that if you get 5 assist medals, or ribbons rather, I keep calling them medals. If you get 5 assist ribbons, you get a medal called Helping Hand. By the way, my controller disconnected. Here is the Makawa build as I'm reconnecting the controller. And yes, here we are back. Unfortunately, I think the Maya has gone down. That leaves only one ship left alive, which is one last enemy cruiser who was last spotted somewhere near us. So we're going to turn back in, see if we can maybe acquire that guy. I think it's actually the Chapayev, and then we'll see if we can take him down. Yeah, there he is. It's the enemy Chapayev. He's still got about half HP. Azerlane Chapayev, even though it got a nerf, I think, in the last update, is still a very potent cruiser. And if he wants to return fire at us, you can see our shells are somewhat floaty. He doesn't have that problem. It'll be a lot easier for him to hit us than it will be for us to hit him. And of course, his HE is going to penetrate our hull pretty much everywhere. We've got a little under 5,000 HP left, so he'd be able to take us out very quickly. So what we're going to do then is abuse the throttle and go to full stop, full speed, try to throw off his shots, turn a little bit if we can. We dodge the initial salvo, but as we get closer, that is going to become more difficult, which is why you generally want to kite away rather than push in. Makes it much harder for the enemies to actually hit you. Looks like Chapayev is going to go broadside. We know we got a Citadel on him earlier, so we might as well try again. But he's taken us down to 240 HP. We've got a fire burning on him now. Doesn't look like he can instantly put that out. And we go down with another Citadel against him, nearly taking him out. In fact, I thought our fire might actually do it. That was a little bit greedy on my part, trying to farm that damage off of the Chapayev, but it doesn't really matter. We've got 2 battleships, a cruiser, and a destroyer left alive to face him. We've got all 3 caps. There's absolutely no way that we'd lose this game. Chapayev is not going to be taking down all 4 of my remaining teammates, although he is going to give this Sinop a run for his money. The fire that we lit on him has burnt out now, as you can see. He's probably got like 1,000 HP left, if that. And, well, this Sinop is not going to be hitting him. I'm not sure if his dispersion is just that bad, or if his aim is just that off. I don't know. Chapayev isn't exactly the most dodgy and maneuverable cruiser you've ever seen. Anyway, Blazing Dread. Should you get it? Maybe. You can get the Suzuya for global XP in the store. This thing does cost those Dread coins, 15,000 of them, and I know you can acquire them by playing the Halloween event. I would assume that if you go to the store, there is also the Halloween section in the store where you can buy these Halloween 2024 containers. It would be under the special section of the store, under the Halloween 24 tab. And I believe, yes, judging by the look of these containers in the store, they give you some of the Dread coins as well. Looks like about 250 from each container is guaranteed. Or I suppose if you buy some of the bigger packs, you can get more Dread coins than that. So I'm not sure whether you can get enough Dread coins for free by playing the game to acquire the Blazing Dread. I'm assuming you probably cannot, and you'll have to make up the deficit with buying crates. But exactly how many you would have to buy, I'm not sure. So don't take my word for that. I bet somebody will helpfully break that down in the comments section, since I didn't do my research and I don't know. Apologies for that, but I think the Blazing Dread is a good ship. If you can get it for cheap or for free, I think it'd be a great pickup, even if you have the Suzuya. This thing does have a better fire chance, and it's got a smoke screen, which offers some very different gameplay from what you usually see on IJN-like cruisers. So, hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.